Though Microsoft's output of first-party games and franchises has always been something they've received a lot of flack for, there's one property under their belt that has single-handedly kept much of that criticism at bay. Halo, the series that proved that first-person shooters on consoles could work. The series that popularized competitive online multiplayer in console FPS titles. The series that has a legacy more impressive and more enduring than many could ever hope to have. But while Halo was, is, and always will be one of the biggest entertainment franchises of all time, there's no doubt that the past few years haven't really been kind to it. Ever since Bungie left Microsoft and handed the series reins to 343 Industries, Halo's been on a bit of a downturn. 343 Industries management has been competent, to be sure, and no one would say that any of the games they've made have been anything short of solid products, but the luster and aura that was once associated with Halo has been, thanks to a series of missteps both big and small, largely missing. Soon, Halo will be returning with its next mainline installment, and Microsoft and 343 Industries have been making big and bold claims about how it's going to reinvent the franchise. It's exciting, to say the least. Halo is a series in need of a reinvention along the lines of something like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it feels like 343 Industries are headed in the right direction, and they have, most importantly, learned from their past mistakes. For the first time in years, Halo feels like it could be Halo once again. But while that's all true, there have been a couple of developments in recent days and weeks that have cast a little bit of a shadow on that bright ball of optimism. Taken individually, none of these factors mean all that much, but viewed together, they could potentially be worrisome. Or, well, could they? A closer examination might suggest otherwise. The first of these happened just a few days ago when it was announced that Halo Infinite's creative director Tim Longo had left 343 Industries. In isolated terms, as I mentioned, that's not too shocking of a development. People move around and change jobs all the time, especially in this industry. But it's also worth noting that though Longo is, or was, the creative director on Infinite, he was still playing second fiddle to Chris Lee, studio head of Halo Infinite, who was, and remains, the person overseeing the entire project and its creative vision. So why is it that some might find it concerning that Longo's left 343? Well, for one, there's the timing of his departure. Halo Infinite's out in a little over a year now, and usually when creative leads leave projects when they're so close to completion, it can spell bad things. None of us have any idea what this means for Halo. Maybe Longo had different ideas for where he wanted Infinite to go, and departed because of creative differences. Or maybe that isn't true at all. It's just conjecture after all. There's also the argument to be made that this far into the game's development, it's now at a stage where Longo's departure won't really affect the path that the game is decidedly set on, especially since Chris Lee is still in charge of the project and holds the reins. Having to change direction so close to release would frankly be disastrous for Halo Infinite, and hopefully that's exactly what Lee is there to prevent. Yet another recent development that's got some people worried though is, to sum it up succinctly, the threat of microtransactions. Recently, job ads from 343 Industries were spotted that mentioned, quote, various business models found in both mobile and AAA games. Even more concerning is the fact that, as per the job ad, 343 are looking to design, quote, a AAA player investment experience that focuses on our fans and their desire to express their passion for our franchise, including but not limited to microtransactions. The wording of those statements immediately throws up a red flag as it is, but when you look at the context from a Halo fan's perspective, you cannot help but feel even more apprehensive. Halo 5 Guardians was a game that had microtransactions, and it had microtransactions in their worst possible form, as loot boxes. And these weren't restricted to cosmetic purchases either. It was an absolutely horrible monetization method that honestly was lucky to escape the unbridled fury of the player base, even if it was restricted only to a particular section of the multiplayer experience. So it's easy then to see why people might be concerned about monetization in Halo Infinite 2. That said, it's also worth noting that, blessedly enough, the industry's landscape has changed since 2015. Pay-to-win microtransactions in games just don't fly anymore, so it's likely that Infinite will only have cosmetic microtransactions, or at least so we hope. There's also the fact that Microsoft themselves have recently been at the forefront of a charge against the exploitative nature of loot boxes, so even if Infinite does end up having cosmetic loot boxes, which might not even happen, they'd be far less aggravating and exploitative than what we fear. There are some more things that might not hint at anything negative per se, but might be making fans uneasy. There's the fact that Halo Infinite's going to be a cross-gen title, which raises some questions about how 343 Industries are handling its development. The Xbox Scarlett is going to be several times more powerful than the Xbox One X, and even more so than the base Xbox One, and Halo Infinite has to make sure that it plays and runs well on both ends of that spectrum. Being the tentpole big-budget launch title for the Scarlett, you'd expect Microsoft would want the game to be able to show off just what it is that their new hardware is capable of. And judging by their words, it seems like that's certainly what they're looking to do. So does that mean that those on the Xbox One will get a pared-back, downgraded version? Well, that'd be foolish, seeing as the Xbox One has an established, respectably large fan base. And sure enough, 343 Industries have been giving assurances that that's not going to be the case anyway. So how do they strike that balance? Well, it doesn't have to be a balance from a technological viewpoint. They can just make the game the best it can possibly be on current-gen hardware and then upgrade it to take advantage of next-gen hardware as well, like a regular cross-gen release. All they really need to do to make both console players happy is make a stellar game. Just look at The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, released for both Wii U and the significantly more powerful Switch, and yet a similar experience in most respects, which managed to win people over not just because of its technical prowess, but its sheer mechanical brilliance. So there's one final concern regarding Halo Infinite that we want to bring up: how little of it that we've seen so far. Microsoft announced the game back at E3 2018 and confirmed at E3 this year that the game will be out in holiday 2020, and all this time, all we've gotten is 2 trailers. One of those was more of an engine demonstration, while the other was a cutscene from the game, essentially. As far as gameplay is concerned, we don't really know much, if anything. Infinite is supposed to be a spiritual reboot of Halo, sure, but how? Should we expect open world elements? Should we expect reinvented mechanics? Should we expect a complete rewrite of ideas from the series past? Well, there's no telling right now. With a little over 1 year left for the game's release, you'd expect that Microsoft would start showing things off. Maybe at XO19 this November. Perhaps at the Game Awards the month after that. But for some reason, it seems that both of these events are going to be notably lacking in new Halo information. Especially the former. Or else we might have heard something about it, from official channels or otherwise. It goes without saying, but more concrete details and perhaps a little bit more gameplay footage would go a long way in convincing people that this is indeed the Halo reinvention they've been waiting for. At the end of the day, though, things are for the most part looking positive. 343 Industries seem to be learning from their mistakes, and they're saying all the right things. But again, it would be much better if we actually had concrete details to go along with that. Recent developments can seem worrisome, sure, but there really doesn't seem like there's any real reason to panic yet. In the here and now, all we can hope for is that 343 lives up to the lofty promises it's been making and successfully delivers the long overdue generation-defining Halo title that we've all been waiting for. And that wraps it up. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos daily. Also, don't forget to switch on the bell notification icon, that way you don't miss out on any of our videos.